In this video, we're going to discuss our global ledger configuration to support various different agencies and talk a little bit about some of the features and functions that are coming within our federal financials version of Infor Cloud Suite Financials. When we've logged into the system, we've come into our controller role. This is the role that's going to have the ability to do some of the major configuration of the solution, which includes essentially our chart of account configuration. We really do that in what we call our finance enterprise group. So if I come over here to do some maintenance on that finance enterprise group, we're going to select the entity. And when we drill into the entity, it's going to basically bring up first the list of chart of account elements and allow us to select which ones we want to use as part of our chart of accounts and which ones are required within the solution. So you'll see that we have our entity, which is our organization or agency, which is required, our account, which will link to our USSGL account, our program and project, our fund, which is required for all of our treasury accounting and reporting. And then we've got some additional elements that we've added here. You'll also see that there's a few different elements down here at the bottom, which we don't have turned on currently, but that an agency or organization could actually configure and use within the solution. You'll have the ability for all of the different elements that you select here to define what those elements are and the various hierarchies that are associated with those. So here if I pick, let's just say my department, you'll see that I have multiple different hierarchies associated with this particular element. This allows us to take one element and roll it up in different ways for various different reporting purposes. So if I drill into the department, I can see that it's got an effective date structure associated with it, so I can track changes in the future, as well as a backdated effective date changes, and I can see what that hierarchy looks like. So this is just essentially a tree structure or organizational structure of how I want to roll up my lower level departments into my higher level departments. I can also decide at what level I expect users to enter their information. So in this case, I'm saying, well, you know what, I want them to enter their transactions here at 2001. If I drill at the details of that, again, this is an effective data value for the department, and you can see that it's active, and then I can track some user-defined elements associated with it. So for each element of the chart of account structure, we have the ability to track and manage it in that way. We can set up various different values and various different hierarchies associated with them. I also have the ability to define various different reporting bases. So this is essentially where I have the ability to put together how do I want to group all of my information and data based on different calendars or different structures. So here I can see I have one reporting basis and I can specify again what are the hierarchies that I want to use as part of that basis, what calendar I want to use for that basis, what ledgers are included in that, and what entities are included in that basis. This allows us a lot of flexibility when we get into our financial reporting so that we can select the same sort of chart of account structure or data elements and reflect those in various different bases within our financial reports. We have the ability to define relationships between elements of the chart of account structure. So I have the ability to say, for instance, I have certain USSGL accounts or maybe departments that can be used with particular programs or projects, and any other departments do not have the ability to associate a program or project with their particular transactions. So there's a variety of different options that we can choose here. And what I wanted to do is take a few minutes and talk about how those features, that fundamental structure of our solution, is going to be augmented with our federal financial management features and functionality that will be added into the solution. So here you can see these are the sort of the areas that we are focusing on from a core financial management area. First and foremost is the development of our USSGL capabilities around budgetary and proprietary accounting, as well as event-based transaction creation to automate those entries based on the various different transactions within the system, such as a GL journal, um, a purchase order, an AP invoice, etc. We have the ability to do the funds control piece, which is part and parcel with our global ledger capability, and also the reporting that comes out of that and is associated with all of those different accounting entries and transactional data that we have within the solution. So when we talk a little bit about some of the financial content that we have the ability, what we are essentially building out is the ability to have different event type codes and essentially transaction sources and events that are associated within our solution so that we automate and derive our USSGL accounting entries from those various transactions that we're entering within the solution. So just to give you an idea of how the foundational elements that I just showed you will look when we talk about those elements within the federal financials area. Here you'll see that we again have our finance enterprise group here that we showed, but we're also going to have an agency associated with that and a main account, and so we have additional elements that are associated with that for us to basically create our treasury account symbol. And so you'll see here that we have the ability to define our component TAS and then have additional information underneath of that around reference codes, etc. So what that's going to provide us the ability to do between the configuration that we have as well as defining the attributes and the transaction codes is to be able to produce our transactional reports and our attribute reports that we need to produce that are associated with GTAS. So here you'll see that we have various different transaction codes. So when we have put together our design for the solution as it pertains to the federal financials functionality, you'll see that we have what we call transaction events. And those transaction events then have, again, transaction source documents that are associated with them. And then within a source document, such as a purchase order, we have multiple different transaction events. So here you'll see that we've selected our purchasing transaction source, our transaction document associated with that is our purchase order. So we've got a purchase order source document, and that then has two actions for creation and cancel of a PO. And we're going to drive the general ledger entries associated with that. So when we come in and create our transaction code event mapping, we're basically saying, okay, we're creating a purchase order, and this is the document reference, and this is the transaction code, and this transaction code has this accounting impact with debits and credits for the various different transactions that are associated with it. So this particular purchase order for a current year that's created from a requisition is going to automatically debit 4,700 and credit 4,610, and then debit 4,610 and credit into 4,801. So when we come back to the solution, we have the ability to then drill into additional detail associated with our financial transactions. So based on all of the data that's entered into the solution, you'll see there's a reporting area, so I can do account analysis, I can do transaction reporting or listing, I can go in to look at my budgetary accounting report and get a little bit more detail about what's going on with all of the various transactions that have been entered into the system. So that gives you an overview of our global ledger capabilities and our configuration capabilities as it pertains to some of the new features and functionalities that are being built as part of our federal financials offering.